Welcome to Whip Count. I'm your host, Stefan Brown Blackman, and I am so happy to be joined by a very special guest today, representative of the 27th District, Eric Morrison. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
Now, we are well versed in the topic, but for those of you watching at home, this month is Pride Month. Every year, we take June to honor and celebrate the lives of the LGBTQIA+ community. Now, you may be lucky enough to know someone that's part of the community, but if you don't, now you have us.
Yes.
Now, Eric, as you know, Pride started as a movement. In 1969, members of the community acted out to rebel against the corruption and discrimination that surrounded them, picking up bricks and bottles to defend themselves against the police in what we now refer to as the Stonewall Uprising. Knowing what you do about events such as the Stonewall Uprising, what does gay history and queer liberation mean to you?
Great question. And one thing I want to stress, and I always stress this, is that the Stonewall riots were exactly that. They were riots. The LGBTQ+ community for so long had been targeted by the government and especially by law enforcement. And they were targeted with bars, our only safe space back then, somewhat safe, being raided, with patrons being beaten, with patrons being extorted, arrested, with patrons being strip searched because of the laws at the time in terms of having to have on certain items of clothing that matched your perceived gender, and it was very bad. And so I want to remind people that, yes, all of this started by throwing bricks and bottles. People were holed up in a bar in New York City, which I visited, and it was wonderful, a little bar called the Stonewall Inn. And that's where they holed up when there was a police raid. And they fought back. And the other thing we forget is how many of those folks were people of color, and also drag queens and transgender folks, and we can never forget that.
What does queer history and gay liberation mean to you?
So it means to me not just equal rights. We talk a lot about equal rights, and we've made huge progress in that, and I'm so happy for that. But it also means things like just having our humanity recognized, having representation, having young people and closeted people being able to see themselves, whether it's in public spaces or whether it's in government or whether it's in entertainment. That's really important. It also means addressing a lot of the issues that affect our LGBT youth, such as very much increased rates of mental health issues, alcohol and substance abuse, homelessness, self-harm, suicide, all of those things.
You know, now that you're a legislator, you've accomplished so much in terms of advancing and protecting the LGBT community, but I'm sure this passion for those around you came from somewhere. What was your life like before you were a legislator?
I came out after a lot of struggle in, my whole life, because as far back as I can remember, I knew there was something different about me. I didn't have a word for it or really recognize what it was until maybe age 11, 12. But anyway, so when I came out at 18, my freshman year in the UD Honors Program, I joined at the time what was called the Lesbian Gay Student Union. And after half a semester there, I refounded an organization that had been defunct for a few years called Queer Campus. We did a lot of things like sidewalk chalking and putting up posters on bulletin boards and just doing things to really push it out there. And the odd thing is, and we took a lot of flack, but the odd thing is it actually had the effect of people then looking at the folks in the LGB student union and other LGBTQ folks on at the campus and saying, okay, they're cool. I get it with them now. But now these queer activists I have an issue with. But it made our community seem more normal because we were pushing this way and folks were looking this way. So that was an interesting thing. And then in my very early 20s, I became involved in Delaware Pride. I became a board member, and I was president for, I think, 4.5 years. Wow. And I've been very, very, very active in raising funds for AIDS Delaware, the Rainbow Chorale of Delaware, HIV Consortium, and all kinds of LGBTQ causes.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
What made you want to be a state representative? I mean, you were already doing so much.
Goodness. I always tell people, if you had told me, I don't know, 6 years ago that you're going to want to be an elected official, I would have said, you're crazy. No, I don't. I was very inspired by Senator Bernie Sanders when he ran his first campaign in 2016 for president. I volunteered a lot on his campaign, and when he didn't win, he said, "Go local." And I started learning a lot about the importance of local and state politics. The importance is huge, and I'd never recognized that. And I got together with some other folks, and they had already founded a group called Delaware United, and I joined that and was on the board of that for several years, and we fought for progressive change in Delaware through various means. I got involved with campaigns and learned about campaigning, but still didn't plan to run for office. But then the more I learned about my Democratic representative at the time, the more dissatisfied I was. He did not support same-sex marriage. He did not support ending conversion therapy for LGBTQ plus minors. Wow. He didn't support a woman's right to choose. And it just really bothered me. And I couldn't decide because I had so many fears. And I was lying in bed one night, again, thinking about it. And I said, Eric, if you take all the fears out of this equation, would you run for office? And I said yes. And I got up early the next morning and I started working on my campaign.
It sounds like seeing and experiencing the way that your community was being overlooked is what really inspired you to take that initiative, and that's really amazing.
Thank you.
Since you've become a representative, are there any pieces of legislation you've worked on that really stick out to you in regards to the community?
Yes, and I said recently, I don't want folks voting for me because I'm gay or just because I'm gay. I want folks voting for me because they believe in the agenda I believe in my platform. But at the same time, I said, when I get to Dover, I'm not going to forget that I'm gay, and I'm not going to hide it. And we have wonderful allies here. We have for many years. Without our allies, we wouldn't have passed things like marriage equality and banning conversion therapy for youth. Right. But at the same time, it's not the same thing as having a seat at the table. And I said, there are pieces of legislation and things that we need to get done that probably only someone from our community can do. So I'm really proud that last year, my legislation banning the panic defense in Delaware went through. And for those of those watching who might not know what that is, it's a criminal defense that allows you to say, I should not be found guilty because I found out this person was LGBTQ plus and I had temporary insanity. And that's been used across the nation. It's been used in Delaware, so we were the 17th state to ban that. Wow. My first or second year here, I worked with Senator Marie Pinckney to help update and modernize our hate crime laws. A big part of that was adding in perceived or actual sexual orientation, religion, race. So before that, the Attorney General's office could only prosecute, for example, if you were attacked for being gay and you were actually gay. This made it so that if I think you're gay, even if you're not, and I attack you, it's a hate crime. This year I have a bill adding pansexuality and asexuality to the definition of sexual orientation throughout code. I've also done a lot of things that don't happen in legislation. We do a lot that doesn't happen in legislation. So earlier this year, I was able to get funding increased for the United Way of Delaware Pride Council. Wow. We got that funding increased tenfold, which we were really proud of. They work with LGBTQ youth, and they do a terrific job. I was able to work with the state so that it's going to be phased in that all public single-stall bathrooms will have to be all gender and will have to have inclusive signage. I've spoken at with various LGBTQ youth at their groups in their schools, and probably other things. But I'm happy that I've been able to accomplish a lot with the help of others for our community.
That's so amazing.
You know, whether it's LGBTQ plus issues or not, it makes me think about the people who've come before us and how we stand on their shoulders and how other people will stand on my shoulders and how it goes up. But in regards especially to our community, I just think so often about where we were 20, 30, 40, 100 years ago and how things have changed. So, and especially in Delaware, we're very fortunate to have a lot of elected officials that are very supportive of equality, but we can never take that for granted. But we can never let down our guard and think we've done enough or think that what we have accomplished couldn't be stripped back at any moment.
Are there any other issues that are currently impacting the queer community that you feel strongly about?
Yes, we need to help our LGBTQ plus seniors. That is a population that is so overlooked. We also need to do a better job, not just in law, but within our own community, of recognizing our diversity and being more inclusive of people of color, transgender people, non-binary people, asexual people, pansexual people.
Yes.
So there are a lot of things I want to work on, and I have some wonderful allies in different parts of Delaware and involved with different groups like the ACLU and some LGBTQ organizations like Equality Delaware that I work with. So there will be more coming.
And are there any resources or things that you think would benefit the community that are not as well known as you might like?
I will say that in maybe the past 20-ish, 25-ish years, so many organizations have sprung up in Delaware for our community. There are organizations out there for everybody. I mean, if you want to sing, you can go join the Rainbow Chorale of Delaware. If you want to get involved in things like planning the annual Pride Festival, you can get involved with Delaware Pride. If you're specifically interested in helping individuals in our community who are people of color, you can get involved with I Am Me. If you are very concerned about AIDS and HIV, which still very much impacts our community, you can get involved with AIDS Delaware or the HIV Consortium. And there are other groups I'm not listing. Right now in Delaware too, we have what's called, I think it's Out Sports. And it started down in the beaches, and now it's coming up to Wilmington, and there are leagues for different sports specific to our community. So I'm going to be signing up for summer bowling, and they're going to be bringing other things up here like cornhole and other sports. So there's something for everybody, yeah.
It's really so beautiful to see the community coming together, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
Now, we know you're a very active legislator. What drives you to be so active in your community?
I don't know where that drive came from. I just felt at an early age that anybody who can really give back should. Not everyone has that opportunity. Not everybody has kind of the privilege to have the time or the resources. And I don't know. I don't know where it came from. I think some of it did come absolutely from my parents, who always thought it was important to be kind to people and to help people. Some of it, too, came from reading about people like Harvey Milk or Audre Lorde and James Baldwin. And
Marsha P. Johnson.
Marsha P. Johnson, absolutely. And different activists within my community that inspired me to specifically work in my community. It's evolved a lot over the years, and, you know, I don't think I'll be in Dover forever. You know, at some point I'll want to move on to something else, so I'm curious to know what that will be.
Is there any advice you'd want to give to someone who may be thinking about getting active in their community just like you are?
Do it. That's an oversimplification, but do it. Don't be afraid to do it. You know, there are so many great ways to meet people in the community, and it does take courage sometimes. It takes courage for anybody of any sexual orientation or gender identity or what have you to get out there and and get active or even, you know, meet new people. But get out there and do it. I've been working actually the last couple of years to get out more in the community as a person, as an individual, and make new friends in the community. And it's been wonderful. And, you know, every time I reach out to somebody, I just have a terrific experience and make new friends and have new people in my life. And it gives me an even greater depth of understanding of the diversity of our community.
That's really wonderful. And is there any advice you want to give to, say, younger members of the community who may be struggling to find their path or their way in life?
I would say just know that there is nothing wrong with you. Know that you are as deserving of equal rights and your human dignity as anyone else.
Yes.
Know that we've always been here. Since the beginning of humanity, we've always been here. And in many cultures, we have been and still are revered for who we are. And know that there are resources out there, whether it's a teacher you know who is supportive of the community, whether it is a school counselor, whether it is a family member, whether it is, no matter who it is, try to find someone, and when you're comfortable, confide in them, and don't be afraid. Do it on your own timetable, and you will get where you need to be.
Yes, it's so important not to rush yourself because this whole sexuality thing, it's a process. And you really gotta find where you fit in to your process.
Absolutely.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming out here today and being on the podcast. It has been amazing having this conversation with you, and I hope everyone at home that's watching got at least a little piece of wisdom from your words today.
And thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful, and especially during Pride Month, I really appreciate it.
From the Delaware House Democratic Caucus, this is Lip Count. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date on all things happening in Legislative Hall. Until next time.